Let's now revise the chapter of dividend. The dividend chapter. It is chapter 8 of Companies Act 2013 and contains very few sections, section number 123 to 127. First of all, we need to understand what do you mean by dividend. If we go by the definition, it is defined in section 2 clause 35. However, it only tells you dividend includes interim dividend. So what exactly is dividend? We are unable to identify. We only get to know that all the provisions of dividend should apply equally to interim dividend as well, because dividend includes interim dividend. Fine. What is dividend? Whenever a company earns profit, if there is no profit, of course, there will be no dividend. Whenever a company earns profit, it has two choices to make, whether to retain the profits or to distribute it, or how much to retain and how much to distribute. When it decides to distribute the part of profits to shareholder, this can be done in two ways: distributing it in cash or distributing it by capitalizing some shares in the form of bonus shares, which is absolutely a separate topic and is a part of the chapter of share capital according to section number 63, which we are not discussing right now. Right, we are discussing about that part of cash profits which is distributed to the investors, distributed to the shareholders when the company earns profit. Okay. Now, there are certain types of confusion which the students have. Confusion number one is with respect to preference dividend and equity dividend. Preference dividend, you have to remember certain things. Rest, forget everything. The chapter revolves around equity dividend. Okay, what things you have to remember for preference dividend? Whenever the company wants to go for any declaration of dividend, they have to first give the dividend to preference holders. Their rate of dividend is fixed. They are being given dividend, which is part of profits. So obviously, if there are no profits, preference dividend also cannot be paid. However, if it is a cumulative preference shares which have been issued, then the preference dividend which is unpaid for any year will be added and will be paid in the next year. However, if it is non-cumulative preference shares, then the dividend, if not paid, goes in vain, right? It's not added, it's not accumulated. So if the company doesn't earn profit, it may waive off the payment of dividend. But in any case, before paying dividend to equity shareholders, dividend to preference shareholders will be done. Fine. Now, when we talk about the dividend, they can be of two types, final and interim. Final dividend is proposed by the board and declared by shareholders only at annual general meeting by passing ordinary resolution, as it is a matter of ordinary business. Interim dividend is declared and proposed and declared, everything is done by board when it is declared between the annual general meetings. So right, not exactly between, yeah, you can say between annual general meetings. So the duration ideally is from start of the financial year till the end of the financial year, and even after that till holding of annual general meeting. So ideally, board has to take a call whether to pay dividend or not. If yes, at what rate dividend should be paid, for which financial year dividend should be paid, and how do you want the dividend to be paid. If you want the dividend to be paid as a final dividend, then it will be declared by shareholders. So the board will propose the same. The shareholders can reduce it, they cannot increase it, and it will be declared. If the board wants to do it themselves, then they can propose, they can declare it. Okay, fine, ma'am. No equity dividend will be paid if there is a default in the repayment of deposits. Okay, section 73, 74 default. If there is, if that default persists, then you cannot pay dividend to your equity shareholders. Now, Section 123 has a lot of things incorporated into one. However, we will read first the segment of interim dividend and thereafter we will proceed the whole section. Because for interim dividend, you just have to remember two different things declared by board, and secondly, the sources of payment of dividend are different. Apart from that, every provision of dividend applies to both the types of dividend, whether it is interim or it is final. Okay. So it can be declared during financial year or even after financial year till annual general meeting by board. What are the sources? There are three sources. For this chapter of dividend, P&L account and free reserves are two different things. Ideally, they are the same for us, but for this chapter, they're two different things. P&L means the undistributed profits. However, the profits which are transferred to reserves cannot be used so easily for payment of dividend. So, point number one, the sources. Whatever profit is lying in your P&L account, whatever amount is lying in your P&L account, that can be used for paying interim dividend. Secondly, the profit which has been earned in the financial year or for the financial year for which you're paying interim dividend. Fine. Thirdly, supposedly we're talking about financial year 22-23, and after the financial year ends, we're paying interim dividend for that financial year. Possible? Yes, ma'am. So, in which year we are paying? We are paying in 24-25, right? So, we are paying in the next year. In this year also, till this date, till the preceding quarter, the company must have earned some profit. So that profit can also be used for the payment of interim dividend of preceding financial year, ideally. Okay, so these three profits can be used. Now, when you are paying dividend after the end of the financial year, then preceding quarter has to be checked. If preceding quarter has witnessed a loss, then law puts a limit on how much maximum dividend you can pay. What is the maximum interim dividend that you can pay if the previous quarter has witnessed a loss? Then what is the maximum interim dividend that you can pay? Not more than average of preceding 3 financial years. Fine. Okay, fine, ma'am. Now we ideally come to section number 123, and these are the sources that we're talking about the final dividend, because for interim dividend we have read separate sources. So these are the sources of dividend that we are discussing for the final dividend. Fine. Out of current year profits, after providing for depreciation, out of past year profits. Now, past year profits are of two types. As I told you, if it is undistributed, stays in the P&L account. If it is transferred to reserves, they are different. And for utilizing that, you need to fulfill the conditions of Rule 3. Okay. So the three sources of dividend without any condition compliance are the current year profits after providing for depreciation, the balance lying in P&L account after providing depreciation, and the money which CG or SG has provided as a part of guarantee. So if central government or state government takes any guarantee, in the case of government company, of course, that investors, you invest and we guarantee you that we'll pay you this dividend. If the company doesn't make profit, then we will provide you the money to pay dividend. So the government provides money, and out of that money, dividend can be paid. Fine. Dividend will always be paid after setting of the losses and depreciation. Fine. If the company does not have sufficient profits in the current year or in the P&L account and wants to use reserves for paying dividend, can it? The answer is yes. So even in case of loss, you can pay dividend using the past year profits which have been transferred to reserves by complying with 4 conditions given in Rule 3. What are the 4 conditions? The rate of dividend will not exceed the average of last 3 years. Whatever amount you draw from the reserves, it's not going to be more than 1/10 of paid up capital plus reserves. The amount that you draw will be first utilized to set off losses, and then it will be used in the payment of dividend. And fourth, after withdrawing from the reserves, the balance of reserves should not fall below 15% of paid up capital. So if these four conditions are satisfied, then money can be drawn even from reserves for payment of dividend. Fine. The depreciation shall be computed according to Schedule 2. Okay, fine, ma'am. How the dividend will be paid? The dividend will be paid only in check, cash, electronic mode, or dividend warrant. The dividend has to be deposited within 5 days. Whenever the dividend is declared, whether interim or final, whenever it is declared, it has to be within 5 days transferred or deposited in a separate bank account. And within 30 days of declaration, it has to be paid. If it is paid, great. If not paid, then you have certain consequences given in section 127. Apart from that, if it is not paid for certain reasons, of course, there can be genuine reasons that the person did not claim. We wanted to pay, but we could not pay. The person did not claim. So within 7 days, you have to open a special account named Unpaid Dividend Account in a scheduled bank, and you have to transfer the amount over there. If you don't transfer, then there is an interest at the rate of 12%. If you transfer it, within 90 days of transfer, you have to prepare a statement about the last known names and addresses of the investors, which we consider as prospective, and they should have been there to collect the dividend, or they are entitled to dividend, but they haven't collected it yet. So a statement of the same is going to be prepared and put on the website. Now, any investor who comes to know of it later on can apply to the company. The company will make the payment accordingly after verifying the identity and everything. If in that unpaid dividend account, the amount remains unpaid for 7 consecutive years, then it is going to be transferred to IEPF. It is going to be transferred to IEPF. If it is paid, great. If it is unpaid for 7 consecutive years, it is going to be transferred to IEPF. What is IEPF? Investor Education and Protection Fund. Investor Education and Protection Fund. The question is, what is IEPF? We read about it in section number 125. Central government establishes a fund, and which has an authority. Authority is constituted which administrates or which administers the fund, right? Which manages the fund. In very simple language, it maintains all the accounts, that from where the money is coming, from where it is going, prepares an annual report. The audit is also done. Everything is done. Now there are some credits and there are some uses of this fund. That is from where the money comes to this fund and from where it is used. Not a very important section. However, see, government grant from unpaid dividend account, just like we read. In the same manner, there are a lot of investments, there are a lot of application money, there are a lot of deposits. The deposits have matured, the debentures have redeemed, but there is no one who claims them. So ultimately, it is not the government's money. Government owes it to the people. And the people are not there to claim. That doesn't mean that the government will leave the company. Okay, fine, you keep it and enjoy. No, you have to transfer it to IEPF, and IEPF, from there also people can claim later on. If they come to know that they have to take something from the company which has been transferred to IEPF, they can make an application to IEPF, provide the adequate proof, and they can take money from there also. Okay, so all that part is credited to the fund, and the fund is utilized for refunding money, of course, for promoters education, for reimbursement of legal expenses and all that part. Okay, now section 127 is an important section which provides the punishment for failure to distribute dividends. If the dividend is not paid within 30 days as it is supposed to, then there is penalty. The director and every part, the director who is knowingly a party is liable to imprisonment as well as fine. Imprisonment can extend up to 2 years, and the fine for 1,000 per day, and the company is liable to pay a simple interest at the rate of 18% per annum. However, in certain cases, the company is not liable. Why the company is not liable? Because the company tried to pay dividend, but the company could not, because of maybe operation of some law. That is, there is a foreign investor and we have to make dividend payment, but the provisions of FEMA are not letting us do that. We cannot. It's not our fault, it's not company's fault. See, company will be penalized or punished only for its fault. This is not company's fault. Secondly, the shareholder gave us a direction which cannot be complied with. The shareholder told us to issue a dividend warrant only, and the warrant returned at the address mentioned by the shareholder. What is our fault? There is a dispute. We do not know the shares belong to Mr. A or Mr. B. The shares have been transferred, they haven't been registered in proper name, the document is inadequate or something like that. So we do not know who to make payment. So we have refrained the making of payment, not our fault. We have to take something from the shareholder. Maybe call money is due from the shareholder. So we have adjusted the dividend against that call money. Rightfully done. And any other thing which is not our default. So if we are not at fault, we will not be penalized. Otherwise, we will be penalized. Right? Dividend, once it is declared, it cannot be revoked. This is simply the time limit just to make you revise the same.